This Impact Wrestling review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Try it, and TNA management will receive a vicious kick in the testicles if they ever even think about putting Taz and Anderson back in the announce booth. Weeks. We went 3 whole weeks with a good announce team. Three episodes where the announcers were competent, called the show like they were supposed to, and didn't try to get themselves over at the expense of everything else. After those 3 glorious weeks, putting Taz back in there and having him bring Anderson with him, who did nothing but encourage him when we need to be reining him in, this was absolutely agonizing. I felt terrible for Jeremy Borash. He was actually tweeting about how awful this announce team was during the show. Like he was trying to apologize for it. He finally gets a shot to call Impact as lead announcer, a position he should have taken over a long time ago, by the way, and he has to put up with this garbage? With Taz and Anderson just trolling him and talking over each other while he's the only one actually trying to call the show?
Oh, what a bunch of bull.
Yeah, they were trying to be annoying because they're heels, but you know what? You can be a heel announcer and still make good points. You can be a heel announcer and still put the talent over. You can be a heel announcer and still put the show over. Taz doesn't do this. He seemed to settle down and started calling the show more normally after Anderson left, but god damn, that first hour of commentary was the shits.
This whole show is ridiculous!
It looks like TNA are experimenting with different announce team combinations now, which hopefully means that they've finally realized that the TNA Taz team has become freaking unbearable. Any change they could make would only be an improvement at this point. Hashtag bring back Todd. I gotta say, I am not missing those show opening Hogan promos at all. I don't know why he's been off TV recently, but I'm enjoying it. It's very refreshing to see the opening segment actually focused on, you know, the wrestlers. We get Bully Ray and Chris Sabin hyping Hardcore Justice. Brooke Hogan comes out unnecessarily. I wonder if she might turn heel next week. Anyway, she handles the contract signing, and she actually wasn't too bad here. One thing that really stood out, though, was some really lame forced comedy in this segment. Sabin with the poopy jokes, Brooke with the dick jokes, and none of this was funny. And it really wasn't their fault. We've seen Sabin be very funny in comedy vignettes before, but man, whoever wrote these crappy lines for them was asleep at the wheel. You get it? Brooke Hogan is hinting that Bully has a small penis, ha ha ha. Beyond that, this stipulation they're adding to the match where if Bully Ray loses he can never get another title shot, this is stupid. It books you into a corner and doesn't give you an out if you need one. It made sense for Sting at Slammiversary because Sting had been getting title shots over more deserving younger stars for years and he's probably not going to be around much longer anyway. But in this match with Bully Ray and Chris Sabin, all you're doing is telegraphing the finish. And yeah, most people are probably expecting Bully to win the title back, but there's no need to make it this obvious. Bound for Glory series matches. Jeff Hardy and Samoa Joe was okay. I like that these matches are starting to get more time now, though a matchup like this really could have used more fanfare. It's pretty good, but the finish was dumb. Anderson just stands up. That's it. He just stands up. And somehow, this is enough to distract Joe so Hardy can get the pin? That's so lame. And what the hell happened to the main event Mafia guys watching each other's backs? Remember that? Why didn't one of them come out with Joe to stop this kind of thing from happening when it was so obviously going to happen? Plot hole! Magnus and Anderson wasn't bad, and the finish to this one I actually thought was brilliant. Bobby Roode jumps into the ring, nails Anderson with a chair, costing Magnus the DQ loss, so he loses 10 points. Suddenly Magnus doesn't have such a huge lead on points anymore. That's smart. That's something an intelligent heel character would do. And it's something we don't see nearly enough of, quite frankly. Smart characters who can exploit stupid rules like that and find loopholes to get ahead. It's so simple, and yet so rarely do we see stuff like this. So some really clever and effective booking right there. The Our Main Event segment was devoted to Tito Ortiz, so he could explain why he's in TNA. And I really wish that had actually happened. Before he can explain himself, Angle interrupts him, and from here on, you might as well have just watched the Angle Rampage segment over again, because this was basically the exact same thing. So Angle respects Tito, Bully Ray comes out and says he doesn't respect Tito, and then the segment just ends. And it's like, wow, that accomplished absolutely nothing. Really poor follow-up to the Tito stunt last week. This felt like TNA didn't have anything meaningful to do with Tito yet, so they just put him in the ring to fill time. If that was the case, I would have preferred they just keep him off the show this week. A lot of the time, when you have celebrities or special attractions or whatever, less is more. Because the more you see them, the less special they become. In my opinion, a guy like Tito Ortiz should only be on the show when you've got something really cool for him to do. That way, his appearances always feel like must-see TV. But if he's going to be there just to be there and not really do anything or advance a story of some kind, well, then he feels like less of a big deal, doesn't he? And once the audience gets accustomed to that, the special attraction isn't really special anymore. If they had just done a video package of Tito's saying he was going to be at Hardcore Justice for reasons we don't know yet, and otherwise just kept him off the show, I think that would have been better, honestly. Mixed tag team match. Gunstorm and ODB versus Mickie James and her partners. Wow. Two rivalries I don't care about wrapped into one. To be fair, that was preferable to seeing them in separate segments this week. The match is passable, probably because Robbie didn't do very much. Jesse Goddard seems to be improving. He's working harder now. He doesn't waste a lot of time posing like he used to. That's a step in the right direction, so good for him, I guess. Still, this wasn't much more than decent, and that's probably the best we're going to get from this matchup. I like Storm and Gunner as the tag champs. I do. But if the only opponents you have for them are a guy who hasn't won a match in a year and another guy who hasn't done anything interesting in almost a year, you can't expect anyone to take this seriously. This is not a tag title feud. At best, this is a time-filler enhancement match. And anyone who remembers Robbie's never-ending series of matches with Devon will tell you that's going to get old quick.
I mean, after all this, you try so hard to convince people that you're a legitimate threat.
TNA, if the rumors are true and you really are in talks with the American Wolves, for the sake of your tag team division, please talk faster. The final BFG Series match this week was Kaz versus Daniels. This was so awesome, you guys. And the crazy thing is, the match had nothing to do with it. They teased Ascension before the match, but then they just leave the ring and get themselves counted out so neither of them has to lose. Because they're the two best friends that anyone could have. They're the two best friends that anyone could have. The body language was what sold it. The ref is counting down, and they're just hanging out there like it's no big deal. This finish was priceless. Oh man, I laughed so hard. Bad Influence are fucking amazing. Only they could have made this work. Then Bobby Roode comes out. And apparently these three are now going to be joining forces in order to make the Bound for Glory series go the way they want it to. I think that's a really cool idea. And it's another storyline, that's definitely a plus. But Jesus Christ, another faction? Really? You know, when I heard Eric Bischoff was running creative now, I tweeted this: get ready for more factions and invasion angles. In 2 weeks! That's all it took! Just 2 freaking weeks! Good Lord, Bischoff! You just couldn't wait, could you? Thankfully, though, this is a really cool faction. And actually, this is not unprecedented. They teased something similar a while back with Bad Influence. Remember Threetune? Threetune? Remember that? Well, they're doing it now with Bobby Roode. And with these three guys, how can you possibly go wrong? TNA, I do not request. I demand a Threetune 3 t-shirt. I want that t-shirt and I want it now. Yes! Main event, Team 3D versus Chris Sabin and Kurt Angle. A solid match, minus 1 or 2 clunky moments, and a slow period in the middle that I wish had been burned off during the commercials. Sabin looks strong again, pinning Bully Ray to win the match, so Wrestling 101 says that Bully wins the belt back at Hardcore Justice. And I don't think anyone really expected Chris Sabin to have a long world title reign, but if nothing else, I think these past few weeks of him as the world champion, getting to hang with the top guys, having them put him over as being on their level, has elevated him to a higher spot than he was at before. I think he's earned a spot now in the upper card. Maybe not the top of the card, I know that might always be a long shot, but the upper card. You can't just put him back in the X Division after this, you can't. Now, has Chris Sabin's world title reign been a plot device for this Pussies in Leather main event Mafia feud? To an extent, yes, but not for nothing. They gave a young, homegrown star a really great rub, one that I never thought he'd get. So something good has come out of it at least. And with a crap storyline like this Pussies in Leather thing, I take what I can get at this point. Kind of a hit and miss Impact this week. Certainly not a bad show, but for essentially a go-home episode, they could have done a better job of hyping next week's matches than they did. But next week we got Hardcore Justice, and I think the build-up has been okay for the top 2 matches, but everything else is just getting thrown out there like it means nothing. They've got a 4-way ladder match that was announced and then brushed aside so quickly, there were a lot of people online that I noticed who completely missed the announcement altogether. And with a match like this, that is a freaking travesty. You've got AJ Styles, Austin Aries, Kaz, and Jeff Hardy in a ladder match, and you don't think that deserves to be hyped a little bit? Or hyped at all? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Is this a joke? You just mention it in passing when you're running down the card and that's it? Do you realize what a huge disservice that is to the match and to those 4 men? TNA, what were you thinking here?
You could have done the right thing, but you didn't have the balls.
Also, there's going to be some kind of Knockouts Tornado match that's either a 4-way or a tag team match. I'm honestly not sure which. The only announcement or promotion I saw for this one was Gail Kim mentioning it on Twitter, so that match couldn't be more of an afterthought. And I ask you, TNA, how is the match supposed to draw for you when you decide to treat it like this?
You have no idea what the right decision would be.
I don't know why those 2 matches got thrown under the bus, but apparently TNA is banking pretty heavily on the steel cage match and the 10-man tag, which is probably an 8-man tag now, to sell this next pay-per-view themed Impact. I hope it pays off, TNA, I really do. Until next time, be seeing you.